Hearing that Justice and Correctional Services Minister Ronald Lamola has now published the draft Cannabis for Private Purposes Bill. Now, this comes after the 2018 Constitutional Court judgment that ruled in favor of the personal and medical use of cannabis. The draft bill outlines new possession rules for cannabis users at the home as well as the people who wish to cultivate the plant. Now, as the South African economy reels from the effects of the COVID-19 lockdown, the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs was investing into the cannabis industry as well. Representatives of the industry have said that the easing of regulations around cannabis should help tackle problems such as hunger and COVID-19. Now, to discuss these developments, I am joined by the founding member of the Cannabis Development Council in South Africa, Krithi Thaver. A very good morning to you, Krithi. Thank you very much for joining us here on Weekend Dawn. I mean, just looking at the Cannabis for Private Purposes Bill, the success, of course, to the regulation of the Cannabis Bill, ultimately with this new draft bill that has been issued. I mean, what are the new rules and updates regarding that? How have you received it?
Good morning, Liesl. Firstly, I just want to thank you for having me on the show. Look, it's a good starting point for us to start the process of formalizing this cannabis industry. You know, we know that the cannabis industry globally is worth close to 100 million, and you know that's quite a significant figure, especially with us coming out of COVID and us looking for new solutions on how to grow our economy. You know, cannabis is the new aggregator. It's got 20,000 plus uses, and we can restart the economy where our economy is needing something for it to restart. We can create those new jobs that we are looking for them to start off. And the point is, it's not the best outcome of a bill that we were looking for, but it is a starting point for us to start negotiating around what can suit the people of South Africa as a whole, and not just make it one-sided for a select few to benefit from this.
All right, so Krithi, on that note, let's just look at what's emerged from this draft bill. I mean, just looking at the limits of quantity that's allowed, public usage, etc. What can you outline for us in that regard?
It's clamped down a lot of the loopholes that were hanging since, you know, the judgment was passed down. So that is it's now finalized the amount that one can cultivate in a household, which is, if it's a single person, it's 4 plants, and if it's 2 people, it's 8 plants. It's also clarified the amount that one can keep, possess, gift to a friend, etc. So, you know, like I said, personally, I'm not in agreement with the bill, but however, there are points in there that we need to look at to ensure that it's not one-sided. You know, it takes cannabis from where it was to a place now where we've realized that it can be something that can be discussed and opened up for everybody to be involved in this process. But what we're not happy about, for example, is the classing. I mean, if there's expungement around cannabis and prisoners that have been convicted for cannabis, for example, are being freed, if it's a cannabis charge only, then it makes no sense putting such stringent rules in place for one to go to prison for cannabis again. You know, so these are the things that we need to relook at. Perhaps maybe let's remove that and add stringent fines that can go back into the economy and you know, improve ourselves in many ways. So that's one of the major things that needs to be relooked at.
So you've mentioned some of the criticisms to this draft bill, and obviously touching on the criminal records for people who've been expunged in the past. But ultimately, I mean, for those who are watching who don't really understand the intricacies of the bill, just looking at the buying and selling of large amounts based on the limitations and public usage at large. I mean, what do those penalties and reasons for imprisonment look like as it stands?
Look, when it comes to private cultivation, if one grows 4 to 8 plants in the household, it gives one enough to consume that for personal use and produce enough medicines. So we do get the fact there needs to be some rules in place. Living in a society with no rules can lead to a number of issues. But, having some rules in place, we agree with that. But things like 100 grams of dried cannabis can be, possessed in a public place. You can gift someone 30 seeds as long as you're not selling those seeds to people. So it does allow some freedom to an extent, but it's contradictory in some ways, because you are allowing the cultivation of it, you're allowing the gifting of seeds, but you still want to lock somebody up and convict somebody for cannabis. So that's contradictory, and it doesn't make any sense on why such stringent the charges, the conviction is prison time. But it clarifies just the quantities that one can carry, like 600 grams or 1.2 kilograms in your household, etc. In a public place, as long as your product is concealed and it's not shown and it's not consumed in front of minors, or you need to consume cannabis with another adult's consent. It defines a lot of rules that were not there in place before. However, these rules aren't, it's not based on science. And writing of these rules should be based on science and scientific evidence. And, the scientific evidence globally at the moment doesn't really show what the bill is written on. So I think we have to go back and just relook at how they've been written and sort of just write them based on the science. Yes, there has to be some rules because of the commercial side to cannabis, but I think let's try and put this bill together so it's an all-inclusionary process whereby the private individuals that want to consume cannabis in their own space are allowed to do so, and then the commercial aspect needs to be defined somewhat differently. So yeah.
So Krithi, just for those who are not familiar with the legal processes from here and too, so you've highlighted the loopholes, the contradictions, perhaps also how this new draft bill also clarifies some of the definitions, the quantities, and a usage at large. I mean, where to from here? What are the recommendations and legal processes that follow?
I think as a community, we need to identify that the concerning points in this bill needs to be relooked at and changed before it's finalized. There is time for that. But we need to act quick. Identifying various points in the bill that are challenged needs to be formally put into the powers that have it at hand, so that we can make sure that it is changed before this is finalized. Because if this bill is finalized in the way that it is, I think we're going a little bit backwards, personally. We fought for freedom of the plant, and this is not total freedom. Yes, again, I'll say that there have to be rules that defines how we can get this process going moving forward, and perhaps those that have written this bill were basing it on slightly stringent laws that were old and outdated, but putting it in a formal request to amend some of these issues is something that needs to be done.
Krithi, I just want to, before we wrap up the conversation, I mean, early on you spoke about it being a new aggregator during this COVID-19, the impacts it could also have on the economy. The Finance Minister, Tito Mboweni, also in favor of its potential contribution to the economy at large. I mean, just looking at the regulation of the commercial of hemp products, etc., and also the value chain at large. I mean, what are the many uses of it? What are the figures we're looking at in terms of stimulating the economy through this sector?
If you look at from seed to the retail model, we're looking at a boost of our economy on many levels, from the cultivation of cannabis through to a retail model that can work well for the tourism sector. globally, cannabis is worth in excess of hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
So if in South Africa we can identify areas that can cultivate the various products, 20,000 actually plus products with industrial hemp and cannabis, from high nutrition for example, COVID patients that want to boost the immune system, through to the textile industry, where you can make materials as soft as silk and as hard-wearing as jeans. I'm actually wearing a coat that's been made from hemp in Africa that's been grown in 6 months. So, these are industries that we can look at restarting and identifying these opportunities in areas throughout KZN, for example. We are able to
Thaver, I'm going to have to leave the conversation there. Thank you very much for joining us here on Weekend Dawn. Unfortunately, we run out of time, but Cannabis Development Council in South Africa, Krithi Thaver, just giving us an update and also reaction to the latest with regards to that draft Cannabis for Private Purposes Bill, which was published by the Justice and Correctional Services Minister on Friday.